Hello and welcome to today's historic best of 3 deck tech and, for a limited time, gameplay video on Black-White Knight Aggro. Much like all of my decks, the name of the deck can basically tell you all you really need to know about the deck. It is a low-to-the-ground, curve-wise aggro deck that makes use of some pretty cool little synergies nestled within the Knight tribe that haven't really seen a lot of play, but I think honestly this deck could make a lot of waves. I like to say that a lot about a lot of decks, but this one I have genuine confidence in. Now for the actual deck tech, we'll just start at the start of the curve and work our way up. 1-drops, we have 4 Dauntless Bodyguards, a pretty aggressive little 1-drop that can also help to ensure our board bits of our board can survive sweepers, which are pretty prevalent in the format. Running 4 Knights of the Ebon Legion as a little 1-drop we can get down early, as well as sink a lot of mana into and do a lot of damage, as well as the ability to just grow the creature naturally from its second ability, or the ability to also trade up against particularly scary creatures thanks to the buff and death touch ability. Knight of the Ebon Legion is a great card, of course, devoid of his knight or vampire tribes, but in this case the fact that he's a knight makes him somehow even better than he already is. Running 3 copies of Thoughtseize for some information gathering game 1. Oftentimes Thoughtseize will be removed game 1 from, or after game 1 going into games 2 and 3 once we have an idea what our opponent is running. Running 4 Worthy Knights, which is by itself a knight bear that also gives you a wider army when you just play more knights, which is what the deck is already wanting to do. And we can also make use of the tokens not only as just more things to kill our opponent with, but you'll see later on that we're able to sort of make use of the wide board we can generate. Running 2 Smitten Swordmasters as a cheeky little bit of reach going over the top with Curry Favor, and sometimes if you just need the 2-mana 2/1 lifelinker as an okay little body, it's not bad. Curry Favor can also let you sneak some wins in because nobody plays this card at all and no one's expecting it. Corpse Knight we're running a playset of, another Knight Bear basically, that also lets us take advantage of the aforementioned board going wide we can make to turn that into little tiny bits of chip damage to go over our opponent's board and usually over our opponent's defenses. Running another full playset of Wintermoor Commanders, a nice little aggressive 2-mana, basically a bear, but not technically, I suppose. The death touch allows it, much like the Knight of the Ebon Legion with its ability, to trade up into particularly scary boards, and the second ability, the Wintermoor Commander's third ability of giving other knights indestructible on attack can oftentimes ensure that some damage is going to get through or some sort of favorable trade will happen. The easiest example of this is, say, 2 Wintermoor Commanders buffing each other up with indestructible and both having death touch, ensuring that blocking it is an absolute nightmare. Also running 3 History of Benalia as a way to both make more knights, which is what the deck wants to do already, and act as a knight buff. Of course, History of Benalia is honestly a pretty good card, much like the, again, Knight of the Ebon Legion. History of Benalia is a pretty good card, just in the vacuum. The fact that we can take advantage of the knight portion of the card is just extra. In this case, it's a lot of extra, but it is extra. I'm running 4 Skyclave Apparitions as a sort of removal on a body. Now, and yes, Skyclave Apparition is not itself a knight, but it's a good enough card that I think any real white deck, or most white decks, really should be running some Skyclave Apparitions if you're wanting to sort of deal with some low-end stuff. Running 4 Murderous Riders as another sort of catch-all removal attached to a body. We enjoy, more often than not, we're sort of saving it for the swift end as a way to get rid of particularly problem creatures or planeswalkers. The loss of life is very incidental, since we can gain a lot more life than one would think. Not only with cards like the Murderous Rider itself being an okay little body with lifelink. The fact that it's a knight helps to elevate it even higher than, again, much like other cards. The Murderous Rider is a okay card in a vacuum, but the fact that it is also a knight is a little extra bit on top that isn't necessary, but boy oh boy, we're sure happy to have it. And the last sort of card in our deck that really sort of gave me the idea to run and make the whole deck is Knight's Charge. Knight's Charge is a white and a black for an enchantment that says whenever a knight you control attacks, each opponent loses 1, gain 1. This, much like the Corpse Knight, gives us a way to turn our knights and our aggressive nature of wanting to go wide into damage to go over the top. Also, the life gain part of it means that you can afford to pay life on things like Murderous Riders, or Thoughtseizes, or Godless Shrines. It allows you to use these normally sort of dangerous effects with a little more reckless abandon, since we can oftentimes gain the life back. Also, with the Knight's Charge, we can also sort of use the extort style effect as a way to sort of outrace other aggressive decks, since we already have a good amount of synergy. And of course the reach is nice against fellow aggro decks, but really the life gain part can oftentimes just win you games on a modestly sized board with 1 or 2 Knight's Charges. It basically means an average aggressive deck sort of can't race you, really. We also have the nice little mana sink in the second half of the Knight's Charged, where if your board gets particularly swept over and over and you happen to have a Knight's Charged in the battlefield, you can always pay the 6 white and a black to sack it and mass res all of your knights, which is really sometimes all of the refill you need to finish off an opponent. Since oftentimes when you're getting to the activated Knight's Charge, you're usually 1 big attack away or 1 good attack away from winning the game, and Knight's Charge gives you that last little breath of air to make it over the line. And that is the core deck. The lands, not terribly difficult. Running 4 Snarls, 4 Shock Lands, 1 of each castle for fairly obvious reasons. White so we can make more dudes, which is self-explanatory what we want in a aggressive deck. 1 Castle Locthwain for a little bit of card draw if we need to have it. Again, we don't mind the loss of life with things like the Knight's Charge and the Rider. And an equal split of swamps and plains. And that is the main deck. Sideboard, also pretty self-explanatory, but we'll go through regardless. Running some Cling to Dust so we can have some little individually targeted graveyard hate. And the fact that we can get recurring use out of it is very nice in matchups where we need the opposing graveyard hate, since we don't want to hate on all graveyards. With cards like Rest in Peace, because of our Knight's Charge, we do like to take advantage of the 8 cost ability part of it if we can. So cards like Cling to Dust or other one-sided graveyard removal is a very nice thing to have in this deck. Running 3 Thalias, since there is a buttload of non-creature, just kind of boring, super slow shenaniganery going on. Thalia is a very, very nice card. We don't really run that many non-creatures that we like super mind being taxed a little bit. So the downside to us is very minimal, and ideally the inconvenience to our opponent will outweigh whatever minor inconvenience we happen to incur. It's also an okay little body if you need it to be. Running 2 copies of D-Sparks as a sort of general, oh crap, there's a big scary thing that costs a lot that our opponent runs, which there are a few of those sort of popping around the format a little bit. Running a couple copies of Archon of Emeria to sort of stop your storm style decks, or even just your aggressive decks that like to play a lot of cards and go really wide. Archon can slow the game down to a pace where you're comfortable playing. Much like Thalia, the minor inconvenience we suffer is so much less than the massive inconvenience that we hope to give to our opponent. And the non-basic part entering tapped is nice, but it's almost not. It's not really the reason we play the card. It's more for the one spell thing. And it also has an okay body that can, in fact, close out games if you needed to. I am running 2 copies of Teferi's Protection as a sort of combo protection piece, because there are a few sort of combo decks that are looking to do something really cool or really flashy. Also sort of bumbling around the format. And Teferi's Protection almost always is a card you play when they're about to activate the big flashy combo that's going to let them win the game, basically. Teferi's Protection is a, okay, you do your magical little combo thing, I'm going to sit here and let you spin your wheels, because odds are your combo needs me to exist in order to do anything. And usually a combo deck, after it runs its little chorus and does its little flashy thing, can pretty easily just sort of sputter and die after it's left to just spin its wheels for a turn. The last bit, I'm running 2 Wrath of Gods and 1 Cleansing Nova. The 2 Wraths are pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes a deck can go wider than us and can do more damage, like an Elves or something like that, or even a particularly annoying sort of Rakdos Arcanist style shenanigans. Normally, as a aggro deck, you don't really want to wipe your own board if you can avoid it. I like to run Wraths in my aggro decks regardless, just because it's a panic button, but I especially don't mind it in this deck today because, again, of the Knight's Charge ability. We can oftentimes refill our board after sweeping, so we don't mind sweeping our board as much. The Cleansing Nova sort of serves 2 purposes here, besides being yet another sweeper for creatures if we needed to. The sort of mass naturalize effect that is the latter half can be fairly nice against your what are those decks called? Mono brown or colorless decks that sort of will pop up 1 in every, say, 20 games or something. Or if you happen to run into something like a 9 lives deck, a Cleansing Nova is very nice to have for those particular matchups. And that is Black-White Knight Aggro. Now, I slightly mentioned this earlier. I'm actually going to resurrect a sort of old practice here, in that I'm going to include another 2 games of best of 3, like I used to. I do this because a few people have shown and expressed interest in there being more games added back into the videos. I will say that I don't mind doing it on one occasion. I have to see that there is enough increase in either views or in the average length of how long a person watches the video, which I can see with YouTube's tools on my end. If either one of those metrics goes up enough, I will continue to do this again. But that's the reason why I removed them in the first place. Taking an hour plus to record a video and do all these things, only to have the average watch time be about a little over a minute, was never really worth the time. So that is why I sort of cut those out. But again, enough people have sort of expressed interest that I'll do one little video of, hey, we'll attach the games to it and we'll see what happens. So if you really want to see more videos of the deck being played in action, you know, it helps if you watch the whole video, or if a video, again, gets particularly more views than normal. If this happens, I'll do the same for the next deck after this. And if not, then it will likely go back to being just the deck tech. Now, for those of you who are just here for the deck tech, if you're still here, remember to like the video if you liked it, sub if you like me, and if you have any sort of constructive bits of criticism down the bottom, or down in the bottom or below this there are comments, and hey, that's what those are for. If you're sticking around for the gameplay, we'll move on now to game number 1. Game number 1 with our black-white Knight Aggro deck. And this is honestly a pretty good hand. It's got things to do early on. And if we draw another land, we're basically cooking with gas. So we'll go ahead and keep this. Going against a Yorion deck, which is... okay. Alright, we're going against what is arguably some jank, but that's fine. I'll gladly take that. We'll go ahead and Snarl on 1. And play the Knight of the Ebon Legion. See what our opponent does. Force from our opponent. Growth Spiral. I thank them for just growth spiraling immediately. Might as well go quicker with it if you can. We'll go ahead and Godless Shrine tapped and just bonk our opponent for 1. Opponent's turn. Plays a mountain. What is this? Some 5-color Niv stuff I'm talking about here? We'll go ahead and play a History of Benalia since we're more or less just trying to feel out what our opponent's doing. So we played out the history and just, again, bonked our opponent with the Knight. Elder Fang Disciple. Your opponent discards a card. Honestly, take the land. I don't really need it. We only really play 1 card a turn anyway. We'll actually play a Knight's Charge here. Go ahead and attack with both our Knight and 1 Knight token. Couple little ping-pongs off the Knight, and they didn't block, so our Knight of the Ebon Legion gets a +1/+1 counter. Plays a land and his Yorion. Flashes back his Disciple and his Banner Geode. So cool, you're making me discard stuff. We'll go ahead and probably get rid of the Apparition, since the Yorion is a 5 cost and is conveniently out of range. We'll go ahead and just attack with the board here, with our now buffed up board due to our final chapter of the history. 3 Knight's Charge triggers. We do lose 1 of the Knight tokens to the Yorion, but that's pretty much unavoidable. But we do get in for 4, as well as some of the extra damage. Go ahead and play a Corpse Knight. And we did enough damage to make our Ebon Legion boy grow again. And our opponent scoops. Our opponent is doing some, by all accounts, goofy shit. Which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. They appear to be a Yorion deck from what we can see. They're 5 colors, so they're probably running some crazy shit. So I think we're going to cut probably 2 of the Apparitions and bring in some D-Sparks, since they're probably going to ramp into some big flashy thing. And we like to be able to deal with that big thing. We don't really need to adjust our aggressive plan too much, since odds are we can just run our opponent down. Of course, opponent goes first. 1 lander with only the Knight and nothing else. We'll go ahead and mulligan. 2 lander, things to do. Probably chuck the history since we can't cast it with the cards in hand anyway. Go ahead and Thoughtseize on 1. Maybe get more information this time about what our opponent is trying to do. We go ahead in this particular game. Oh, it was some Bananarama stuff. Alright, Yurok, you're gone. So it is some sort of multicolored, big flashy stuff deck, which is fine. Our opponent growth spirals. Goes ahead and plays a dual land, basically. We'll go ahead and play a Plains and play a Worthy Knight, so we can attempt to start going wide. Opponent plays a land, plays a circuitous route. Probably going to look for a couple basic lands, I imagine. They could have gates, to be fair. They could have some gate synergy buried within that pile of cards, but no, they're snow lands, which is a thing. We'll go ahead, and since we can only play one card anyway, we'll just play the Snarl tapped, and just play the Wintermoor Commander. Gives us a Worthy Knight charge, or trigger, sorry, making another little 1/1. See what our opponent does. Triumph from our opponent. Grey Merchant of Asphodel. That's a thing you can do. We'll go ahead and play a Castle Locthwain. We'll go ahead and despark their Grey Merchant away, since we don't want them to be able to flicker that. We'll also play a Dauntless Bodyguard, protecting our Worthy Knight. We also get another 1/1 from the Worthy Knight in question. And then we just attack all. Do some damage. Our opponent is not as dead as I would like them to be, but I feel like they're sort of running out of things to do with their one card in hand and a Yorion. With some of their mana, they do put the Yorion into their hand, which is a thing. A little annoying, but we can deal with that. Oh yes, they played the Midnight Clock. I so rarely see that card. We'll go ahead and play another Wintermoor Commander, getting another human off the Worthy Knight, and just attack all. To try and beat our opponent down until they're no longer alive. Opponent down to 8, we're at 16. We have the double Wintermoor Commander lovely little synergy that we talked about in the... Oh shit, an Ugin. I think we just lose, right? Yeah, we actually just lose. There's no amount of coming back from that. Okay, that's fine. Ah, yes, Ugin. Saving bullshit cards that really should not be able to exist by all accounts. Honestly, I think now that we kind of know what we're going up against, we can actually cut the Thoughtseizes. And I think we should just bring in some Thalias, slow down their ramp spells a little bit, as well as generic good card Ugin the Spirit Dragon. But I applaud our opponent for committing to the bit of playing a just totally random pile of cards, supported by a Yorion and an Ugin. I imagine there's probably other stuff buried in there. There was a Yarok. So really I can't properly gauge what our opponent's deck is going to be. Besides cards they like, which is fine if you want to run. Our opponent is taking their sweet time. On the Game 3 sideboarding, weirdly enough. One would imagine they would have already sideboarded in what they wanted or felt was necessary. Oh boy. Okay, we'll see if I need to cut this. I would like to keep this game, sir. Oh, come on, don't do this to me. Gonna slow roll me. What are you even waiting for? I mean, to be fair, I suppose I have also used the sideboarding phase to take a bio break real fast. Luckily, it's only 2 minutes, and I can fill 2 minutes of dead space with rambling blindly with no real point, purpose, or destination in mind. But oh boy, what a lovely, lovely set of circumstances. I'm a little concerned that if our opponent just happens to have gone AFK, that I can't really use this game, which is lovely. Another one of those perks of not including gameplay in the videos anymore, that you don't have to cut... Hey! There we go. That you don't have to cut out games like this where they could have gone AFK and you just lose the entire game's worth of footage. We'll go ahead and play first because we're an aggro deck and we have a brain. Honestly, probably it's a good keep. We'll probably just Dauntless on 1 and Thalia on 2. Since we want to really make use of those sideboard cards that we actually brought in. World Tree from our opponent. Yeah, they're just a pile of cards that I can't really do anything about. We'll go ahead and Godless Shrine, shock it in, play our Thalia. Hopefully slowing down their growth spirals, circuitous routes and stuff. I suppose next turn we can bring in the Corpse Knight. Triumph from our opponent. I think we will actually bring in the Corpse Knight and then the Worthy Knight so we can start taking more advantage of the Corpse Knight's little reach ability. Opponent's turn. Snow-covered island, followed by something. Something? Yorion into hand? Of course, okay. There's a chance he's holding on to something. We'll go ahead and play the Worthy Knight because we want to make use of the Corpse Knight trigger now. I don't think they had anything. I mean, to be fair, you might as well try and bluff somebody. Ah, neighbor's mowing the grass, which I have to do later. Elite Guard Mage. Alright, that's the thing our opponent can do. Let's see what we can do here. A land from us. I mean, we can just Murderous Rider or Swift End. They're a blocker away. And once again, just swing with our board. Opponent down to 2. Could always be running another one. There's enough guild color cards in here that I'm convinced that our opponent is actually running a Niv. Plays the Elite Guard Mage and scoops. Correctly so. That was game 1. Honestly, pretty happy with that. We'll go on to game number 2 now. And game number 2 with our black-white Knight Aggro. We have a awful hand, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. That's better. Better, and we might actually chuck the Castle Ardenvale, weirdly. Since we have enough things to kind of do, really. Planes from our opponent. We'll go ahead and Snarl and reveal a Godless Shrine to play a Dauntless Bodyguard. Let's see what our opponent does here. Another planes. We can play another Snarl here and reveal the same Godless Shrine, which is a nice little trick for you people at home. What is our opponent doing? I think we'll run the Corpse Knight, and then next turn play the Worthy Knight and try and, much like last game, make as much use of the Corpse Knight triggered ability as we can. Third white. Mono white angels, maybe? We'll go ahead and Worthy Knight here. I think we'll honestly just pay the 2 life to curry favor. Hurt our opponent for a little bit. We'll just attack with the Dauntless Bodyguard, because we don't mind trading that away. Though I was about to say, I would imagine they don't actually make that trade. So, some sort of angels, I assume, are coming up next turn. We shall see, of course. Ooh, a Shalai. Our opponent's board is a little bit imposing. Oh, it's blue-white angels? Okay. I think the only blue angel is that truly god-awful one from Zendikar. We will go ahead and instead of playing the Swordmaster, we'll just go ahead and play the Apparition. Removing the Shalai. Honestly, I think we're going to need to take advantage of our position here before we sort of lose our steam. So we'll just go ahead and attack with our board, and whatever trade they make, we're comfortable with. And they make no trade. I would call that the wrong decision, but I see it. Because if our opponent plays something like a Lyra, we're in trouble. Another plans from our opponent. They can play the Lyra with or without the Starheim Aspirant. Palladium Mirror. Okay. A little concerned or confused on what your deck's trying to do, but I am interested. And our opponent scoops it up. Hey man, I'll take a free win. They appear to be ramping into, like, relatively big things. So I think we'll take out some Thoughtseizes, bring in some D-Sparks so we can actually get rid of the things they're ramping into. The last Thoughtseize... you know what? We'll bring in one Cleansing Nova. It could have been a Wrath, I fully recognize this. But in the off chance there's also some weird artifact or enchantments we need to be concerned about. That's why I chose to bring in the Cleansing Nova in particular. We're going to actually go ahead and keep this and just play a castle tapped on 1 and do the Worthy Knight and then just play the Bodyguards, ideally, is how we're going to work with this. See what our opponent does. And we can afford to have a bad keep since we are 1 game ahead. Speaker of the Heavens. So it is some sort of angel deck. We do a Plains, so we'll go ahead and instead just run the Bodyguard by itself first. If they attack with the Speaker, we take that trade all day long. That card will be another one of those things that lets our opponent slowly crawl away from us. See, you draw a black castle. We'll just play a swamp and play the Worthy Knight now. Go ahead and attack. We're happy if he makes the trade. But yep, they don't make the trade. And understandably so. Another land from our opponent. A Heliod Suncrown. Alright. If he attacks with the... Okay, that's a thing. I'm actually going to Skyclave Apparition away their Heliod. We want to remove as many of their life-linking instruments as we can, since, like any other aggro deck, sufficient life gain is actually kind of scary to us. See what our opponent does. They are in the tank, as it were. Resplendent Angel. Very nice. And a Tranquil Grove. We would love a murder spell or some sort of... Hey, that'll work. So we'll go ahead and play the Castle Locthwain. We'll go ahead and do the Skyclave Apparition, getting rid of their Resplendent Angel. And once again, just attacking with our full boards if we don't really... There we go. There's game 2. A pretty good showing from our little aggressive deck. And our rank up's pretty nice. We'll go ahead and sort of end off with a last little parting words and one last look at the deck if anybody at home would happen to like it and want to try it out for themselves. And that is our video for black-white Knight Aggro. A very fun little aggressive deck that is one of the few decks that I have a real confidence in, that I think if you, by some miracle, can craft this thing at home, and you like aggressive decks and tribal decks, like I do, I think you could find a lot of fun with this if you happen to want to try this out on your own. With that, however, that's going to be the video. Again, like the video if you liked it, sub if you like me, and on the note, we're going to bring this, or try to hammer this home again. We are attaching the gameplay videos to this particular one, unlike the one, since we have cut this out, unlike past ones over the last few weeks. If you want to see more gameplay videos, either leave comments on YouTube or say on any subreddit this might happen to find its way upon. Leave comments there so I know. Either make a lot of noise, or just watch the video more, or if it gets more views, or a good amount more views, or a good amount more watch time, then I'll return to this particular little format. With that, however, all out of the way, thank you all. I'll see you all in the next video. And remember, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together.